Hey, we're back with the 18th chapter of Wise Child, Juniper Returns. Got cut off by a phone call last time. Wise Child has Coleman over to keep her company while Juniper is away. She was terrified Maeve was going to come get her. They are asleep in Juniper's bed, and Wise Child remembers the silver that Juniper left her. So we'll start from right before that happens. Soon Coleman fell asleep, and I was left to my painful thoughts. I tossed and turned, tormented by wanting Maeve and not wanting her, by the fear of her arrival, by half memories of a fire that had frightened me, by the dread of cruelty and wickedness. Just as I felt that I could not bear my own mind a moment longer, it was as if someone had touched my burning brow with a cool hand, caressing it. At that very moment came the memory of Juniper's talisman, to which I had never given a thought since Juniper had left. I slipped quickly out of bed, went to the dresser, put my hand under the clothes, and suddenly felt the satiny touch of silver. I heaved a sigh of peace, of relaxation, even as I touched it. I pulled it out and looked at it. I could see it quite clearly in the moonlit room, and I carried it to where the moon's beams rested on it. As from habit with the stone, I lifted it to my cheek, but the talisman sang no song, spoke no rhyme, simply rested in my hand as if it was a perfect fit there. I climbed back into bed, still holding it, and fell asleep almost at once. Presently I woke to Coleman standing over me. I must go now. Dad may not know I wasn't home. With a bit of luck, I'll see you soon. Take some bread with you, I said. I went back to sleep. When I woke again, it was sunrise, the eerie half-light of the dawn. I woke because someone out in the garden was calling my name. Wise Child! Wise Child! I knew at once who it was. I got up unhesitatingly, went to the window and opened it, and there, standing out among the flower beds, was Maeve. She was wearing the same clothes she had worn the last time I saw her, and her long golden red hair was about her shoulders, though only a ghost of itself in the eerie light. As was Maeve herself, she was holding Bran by the bridle. To my surprise, I no longer felt afraid. "What do you want?" I asked in a firm voice. "You summoned me," she said. "Bran and I have come to take you away to a life of a princess and a lady." "I cannot go anywhere without asking Juniper," I said. "Not without Finbar's consent." "Finbar!" she said in a voice of contempt. "He will never return." "Yes, he will. But in any case, you summoned me. I was wrong to do so. I felt lonely, but I want to live with Juniper." "Where is Juniper, that old enemy of mine?" I did not feel like answering that. It was obvious enough that she wasn't there, but all the same, I did not want to say so. "This is your chance to go away without a fuss. She'd never let you go if she was home. Bran grieves for you." "I'm not coming." "Well, at least come out in the garden and greet your mother, whom you summoned on this long journey." I could feel the old longing begin to rise in me. More than anything in the world, I longed to run down and out into the garden, barefooted and in my nightdress, and fling myself into Maeve's arms. What stopped me, I think, was a sort of distraction. It was that the talisman in my hand had become burning hot, so hot that I had to hold it gingerly by its edges. "I cannot come with you or talk to you unless Juniper says I may. If she says it is all right, then I will do it." Maeve's face seemed to close in on itself. "We are a good little girl, aren't we?" she said scornfully, and I could feel an old pain stir in me. "I'm going back to bed now." I shut the window deliberately, padded across the floor to bed, and got back into it, still clutching the talisman. The calling began then. To start with, I could hear Maeve out in the garden calling my name in a high, piercing voice that gradually grew higher and higher, almost like a whistle, until it seemed as if it rang right through my head, rinsing my eardrums with its intolerable sound. Then it was as if the voice was in the room with me, under the bed, up in the high corner of the ceiling, in the middle of the dresser, muffled under clothes. From out of my empty nest, from the window, from the candle stand, I began to tremble violently. Then the pulling sensations began, as if someone was taking my limbs one by one and stretching them until they went into spasm. I grew very hot until the perspiration ran down me, and then very cold until my teeth chattered, and I shook as if I was out in a heavy frost. I shook so much that I could hear the legs of the bed rattling on the floor beneath me, a drumming sound that was in itself disturbing and seemed to herald a new and unwelcome stage of torment. The drumming on the floor continued even after I had stopped shaking, and then there was a series of clicks and clucks from all over the room, as if the walls, the ceiling, and the furniture were trying to speak to me. Then an extraordinary sense of vertigo seized me. The bed seemed to be spinning on a tiny platform in space, and all around it there was nothing. Sick and terrified, I hid my face, but I could feel the platform tipping, tipping. Then I was no longer in my room, but deep in the underground cavern, staring at the terrible painting of the devil. But even as I stared, I became part of the painting. The girl held in that dreadful claw, helpless to escape, and the face of the devil was the face of Maeve. In that terrible moment, time stood still. Then, gradually, the sound and sensations died away, and I could see the sky fresh daffodil yellow outside the window of Juniper's house. I thought I could hear someone shouting in the garden, and then there were running steps on the stair. The door flew open, and there was Juniper's beloved face. Wise child. The tone of her voice covered a whole range of love, concern, understanding, sympathy, sorrow, and knowledge of what I had just gone through. I don't remember much about the rest of that day, except that a lot of time I seemed to be sitting on Juniper's lap. Coleman was here, I said in a voice like a stranger's. He stayed the night, but he had to go before. Juniper nodded gravely. It was the stone, you see. It kept talking to me. It said that she was coming, and then I got frightened. I bolted all the doors, and then Coleman came, and then eventually she did come. Yes, she did. Coleman couldn't hear the stone. He thought I was being silly. I didn't remember about the talisman until last night, and I took it out and held it. Where is the stone now? On the front steps, unless Maeve took it. How did you get the stone? The first time I saw her, before she gave it to me. My voice faltered, but I continued. So I brought it home, and because I knew you wouldn't like the idea, I hid it. My voice got fainter. It was so pretty. At first I forgot all about it, and then I kept taking it out and looking at it until gradually I just couldn't leave it alone. I see. As usual, Juniper offered neither blame nor rebuke. My poor wise child, she said, and she stroked my hair gently, and I left you all alone with it, the summoning stone, as it's called. People know about it? It seemed less alarming if it had a name. Some people know about it. You see, it gave Maeve power over you, which she wouldn't have had otherwise. Well, not like that. I knew that I must tell her the hard thing, but you see, I used it to summon her. To begin with, I really wanted her to come, because I wanted to have an easy life again and ride on Bran and all that. Then Coleman said she would be cruel to me, and other things, and it made it easier to refuse. I could see that I was better off here, so I didn't go. Are you better off here? Juniper asked with a hint of a laugh in her voice. I felt ashamed that with all her love and care for me I had wanted to run away from her a second time, and I hung my head, so she answered for me. I make you work very hard, and sometimes it's boring and you miss other children, and though you would like to be adoring sometimes, at other times you don't like the idea at all. I know it's difficult, but I do think it's better for you than living with Maeve, or I'd let you go this very day. Bear with me a few years longer, or at least until Finbar returns. Grow bigger and stronger, and all kinds of things might be possible. As for Maeve, who can say what she intends if she gets you to go to her house? But forcing you to do something cannot be right. It is not Finbar's wish that you live with her, and deep down it doesn't seem to be your wish either, or you wouldn't have struggled so hard to stay here. I was silent for a few moments, humbled by my own folly. I like it here, I said, and I love you. And I put my arms around Juniper and kissed her, wondering how I could have thought about abandoning her. Now we must see what became of the summoning stone, and then we will get some supper, said Juniper, rising. She went out to the steps and then called to me. The stone was still lying where Coleman had left it the day before. Pick it up, wise child. We will take Tilly and go to the bottomless lake. Must we? It was several miles to the lake, and I was very tired. Yes, we must. You can ride on Tilly. I picked the stone up unwillingly, The bright colour in it seemed to have gone dead. No sound came from it, only a feeling, what I thought of as a sort of prickle, as if it was punishing me. Ouch! Put this cloth round it, said Juniper, as if stones that pricked you were the most normal thing in the world. When we got to the lake, she made me take the stone out of its covering, it pricked me again, and throw it out into the middle of the water, where it plopped and sank. I felt better. What about all those things she did? I asked Juniper on the way back. The noises, and the pulling feelings, and the calling, and all that. When she puts her mind to it, my darling, your mother is no mean sorceress. How did you make her go? I remembered the raised voices out in the garden. I told her to. She was on my ground, you see, where my power was stronger. Wouldn't it be stronger in other places? That would depend. Will she come back? Not for a while, I think. I was silent then, pondering on Juniper's answer. Suddenly, far away across the moor, I could see a running horse. Bran! I gasped. The pony was coming nearer us, but turning in great circles like a mad thing. Juniper stood quite still, as if concentrating very hard. I stood beside her, and we must have waited half an hour while Bran galloped around us. Eventually he reached us, but with his eyes rolling and his mouth frothing. Don't touch him, Juniper said, as if afflicted by Juniper's stillness. Bran now stood still, his breath coming in great sobbing heaves. When he had quieted a little, Juniper began saying something in a foreign language. Then, while Bran's head sank lower and lower, she began to walk around him with her shins, signaling for me to do the same, all the while reciting. For perhaps an hour she performed this ritual, occasionally making little signs with her hands. Then she approached him and touched his legs, his head, his tail, as if anointing him. When she had finished, he raised his head again and looked at me as if recognizing me for the first time, and I went to him and stroked his face and his neck, which were covered with sweat. Poor Bran. What was it? I asked. The evil eye. He'll be all right now. Can he live with us? I asked joyfully. I think he'll have to, she said. I can't think what else we can do with him. It's an ill wind that blows nobody any good. And she gave me one of her wide grins. Something else was troubling me too. The scar on my hand, I mentioned it with difficulty. I had a clear picture in my head of a room with a great hearth in it, and myself sitting by the fire, small and frightened because I had done something wrong. Then Maeve, who was as tall as a giantess in my imaginings, had picked up a poker which was still hot from the fire and struck me with it on the palm of my hand. I had fainted from the pain and had come around also alone and terrified. All this I had told Juniper, and she listened in the quiet, dispassionate way she had when you told her something truly terrible. It was as if she was joining things together in her mind, making some act of love and healing, where otherwise all was violence and despair. She took my hand and gently unfolded the fingers so that the scar was exposed, and it was as if she took up the whole dreadful incident in her worn, loving hands. She didn't love me, I said, the tears pouring down my cheeks. I think she did, Juniper replied, as much as she loved anybody. People who can't show love in any other way sometimes do it by hurting people. I knew that she was making me a generous gift, the gift of a mother who was not all bad. I sat and considered the scar that I had always hidden, even from myself, held before me as evidence. I came to a decision. From now on, I said, I choose you to be my mother. And that's the end of chapter 18.